Hello everyone, welcome to Biblical Prepping. I'm Judith Garten. This is the prepper portion, and I have a project here. I packaged this up last night, so I wanted to tell you about it really quick. This is my latest batch of homemade apple cider vinegar. And I use a simple recipe I can link to below. It's not actually mine, it comes from another website, and I love her recipe. It's simple, it's easy. And this came from applesauce. What do I mean? If you watched my other video about making a quick batch of applesauce, then you know where these came from. A couple of months ago, the house near us that is owned by the bank, a repairman came by to work on the house and work inside the house. I noticed that the apples on the tree out front were turning yellow, and I asked if I could pick them. I picked the first batch and I cut them up and froze them and put them in the freezer in a big vacuum seal bag in our upright freezer. Then when I could afford to grab some additional apples, I made my first batch of applesauce. I only got about 6 half pints out of it. But there were a lot of apples left on the top of the tree that I could not reach. I found myself wishing I could grab somewhere a fruit picker. Actually found one, got one, and when the rest of the apples were ripe, I went over and grabbed the rest of the apples. It was about a month, 3 weeks to a month in between picking. But I got whatever was left that the deer hadn't snagged off the ground. They were ugly apples. You want to talk about ugly apples. Everything you can imagine was wrong with them. However, they were still good apples. Now, with the first batch of applesauce, and I'm not sure which bottles anymore were from which batch of applesauce, but with the first batch of applesauce, I took the cores and I put them into a Ziploc bag into the freezer. I took out all the apple seeds and whatnot, cut them into decent pieces, put them back in the freezer, and then I set them aside because I knew I was going to make vinegar some point in the future. Then when I picked the second batch of apples, I figured, you know what, now's the perfect time to get things going, make sure I get everything set up, so let's just do the vinegar. And I did. So this is there were actually 2 more quarts. So I've got 7 here, so 9 quarts total just out of the apple cores was what I got. No, I take that back. There's 4 more quarts still in the pantry. So 13 quarts just from apple cores and scraps. So I did that, but 2 of the quarts from this batch you see here, they were moldy, so I had to dump those out. But this is just from that first bunch of apples. Then the second bunch made the 4 quarts that are in the pantry. Now what I had done out of the first batch of apples was the water from the bottom of the pan, I threw scraps back in it and then I boiled it, and then I removed all the scraps, strained it, and I got this almost half gallon of juice that I am also fermenting for vinegar. So what have I got going on here? I have this is Honeycrisp. This one is Honeycrisp. And this one is Honeycrisp. I picked different varieties of apples to put into the applesauce. The first batch was Fuji Gala and Honeycrisp, as well as local apples, so there were 4 types. This particular bottle here is actually Fuji Gala apple cider vinegar because I didn't have enough of the Fuji or the Gala to make 1 quart. So I just piled their scraps together in the jar, added my sugar and filtered water, and set them up to ferment with my ferment lids. So this one, I tested all of these bottles, and I'll show you that in a little bit, for their acidity. So I have these labeled. This is a Fuji Gala ACV from 10-5-24 and is batch 1 of this particular type, and its pH level is 2.9. Now I'm actually going to set this in the pantry in the dark and allow it to continue to ferment a little. I put the lid on loosely, and I'm going to check these every day or so to make sure that the lids haven't blown off, and if they have, they're going back on. I'm not happy with the acidity on this one. I want it to be a little more acidic. So I'm going to let it try and get down to about 2.4. This one and this one are also going back. This one can actually go in the fridge. So these three are all going to go. Now these two here are Honeycrisp only. They are 3.2 and 3.1. I want them way below 3. So they have to go lower. This Honeycrisp is 2.6. So like I said, it can go in the fridge. Now I found an interesting little detail in between. This bottle here is actually a combination of local apples and Honeycrisp. This is, it's at a 2.4, so the acidity is very nice, right about where I want it. I love the color on this one. It's more like what you might buy in the store from certain companies regarding their organic vinegar. I love this one. This one here is just local apples. It's darker than the Honeycrisp and the Fuji Gala, but nowhere near as dark as the local and the Honeycrisp. This one is at 2.4 also, so these are just going in the refrigerators. This one is another local. It's about the same color as the other one. The local ones seem to do a darker vinegar, and this one's at a 2.2. So I think going forward, I would really like to try and find some more local apples next year and make my vinegar from local apples or a local combo. So local apples plus another kind, possibly a Honeycrisp. It seems to produce a nice darker tone, and it also gives a good acidity. But this one is my favorite. This one is the darkest of all. This is the juice from all of the clippings, from all of the debris that I got out of my Vittorio strainer. So this one is the darkest of all. And when I opened this up yesterday to see if it was acidic enough, it smelled like vinegar. It's not quite there yet, so it's going to get another week to 2 weeks fermenting before I strain it into bottles. It's got a huge lot of mother on the bottom, which I find really cool. But the color is richer. This one I know has some Gala, some Honeycrisp, and local apples in it. This one is the darkest one yet. And I want to experiment next fall to find out if this is because it was made from the juice or whether it was made from the 3 different types of apples. So that's going to be an interesting experiment. But all of these, plus the quarts that I have in the pantry, should get us through at least a good 6 months, maybe 9 months of apple cider vinegar. And I'm really happy with all of this. I'm grateful for all of the ones that we have to put up in the pantry. Now, like I said, you have seen that I have written on all of the bottles that they have an acidity, their pH level. How did I get that figured out? Oh, these bottles, I love these bottles. If I can still find the set available, I will put a link down below in the description for you to get. This bottle I got on Amazon also. It actually has a pop-top lid. I don't know where it is right now, otherwise I'd show you. If it's still available, I will do that. I'm also going to include ferment lids and the valves sets so that if you need some, you can buy those. And I'm also going to include a link to, grab this, my pH meter for food. That's not closing because this isn't going in there all the way. There we go. This is a pH meter specifically for food, and when I saw this, I had to grab it. Common foods to test, of course, vinegar. This should be at 2.0 to 3.0. Bread dough, 5.9. Baking soda, 9.0. Egg yolks, it lists cheese, so if you're going to make cheese, it helps you to determine that. Fruits, jams, coffee, you want to find out if your coffee is acidic. Tea, egg whites, I don't know why I would want to know that, but there you go. lettuce and oranges. It'll do lemons, all citrus fruits. It's just really cool. If you are one who wants to experiment with sourdough bread, sometimes you need to know whether or not your sourdough starter is at the proper acidity to create what it needs to do. You can use this to test your sourdough. I've not tested mine yet because it's not functioning real well right now. I just pulled the dough starter out of the freezer and it's just not doing great. So we're going to see what we're going to do with that. But the pH meter is really cool. It comes with all the solutions you would need. It has a buffer solution and it has another buffer solution. You use these according to the instructions to ensure that your pH meter is calibrated correctly. I've done that already. It's very simple to follow the instructions. I'm actually not going to go through the instructions because I don't want to get anything wrong and tell you that you need to do something that you really don't. So make sure that you follow your instructions. Keep your manual close by. I actually keep this entire unit over in a bookcase that I have so that it can be used whenever it's necessary. I love the fact that they sent extra batteries. Totally awesome. I don't know what the paintbrush is for, but they sent all the tools that you would need and the rag to wipe it off with if you need that. I just usually use a paper towel, that way it's clean and done. It's very simple to unscrew this portion. And like I said, it is calibrated. You turn on the meter, and I will show you. It registers. Easy peasy. Now I'm going to actually test this jar of juice, and we're going to see where it is. Hope it doesn't knock me out. It was really fizzy last night. I have to say, of all the different types, this one smells the best. So we're going to see what acidity this one is. For me personally, this one's too high. Can you see it's at 2. It keeps teetering between 2.94 and it's so bright today with all the snow outside. It keeps teetering between 2.94 and 2.98. So it did at one point in time while I was standing there at the camera go up to 3.0, which I'm not happy with. So this is definitely going to ferment for at least another 2 weeks. At least another 2 weeks. And I'm just letting it ferment in a dark cupboard. And we will test it again in a couple weeks. I'm going to have to put that on my day planner, make sure I get that done. But this has come in very handy. I've not known in the past what my vinegars were at. And sometimes they don't quite taste as tangy as you want an apple cider vinegar to taste. This has helped me figure out which ones need to go back. So all 3 of these plus this jar will be going back to ferment in the dark, all by themselves in a closet. And these other ones can go in the refrigerator for us to use for salads, cooking, whatever we need. And I'm really excited about this. I have a lot of apple cider vinegar. Again, I will include links to the products, including this pH meter. And if I get the sourdough starter tested, I will also include that information so that you can see that as well. I hope this has helped to show you. It's actually extremely easy to just mix together your liquid, which is just filtered water, your apple scraps, and sugar, and allow it to ferment. Now, prior to owning the fermenting lids, I would just put a canning lid on my apple cider vinegar jars. I have plastic ones, so I would use the plastic lids, and then I would just allow them to ferment in the cupboard, but I didn't tighten the lid down, and I would check very regularly. Now you want to make sure that sometime around 3 to 7 days, you want to strain all of the material out of your apple cider vinegar. I have actually forgotten about it and gone as long as 2 weeks or 3 weeks with apple chunks in it, and to me it hasn't made much of a difference flavor wise or acidity wise and all that. But you want to make sure you strain everything out and then put them back in the cupboard to ferment for longer. I will include, like I said, the directions that I use down below. Very, very precise, easy directions to follow. If you have any questions, please make sure to ask in the comments below, and look in the description for all the products and the pointers. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and make sure you start sharing the videos to help your friends. Let's get back to making more things at home. This is definitely a waste not, want not, because I didn't waste anything. And then the apple scraps that were left over, most of them ended up in the compost pile. I had to wait till they dried out and weren't quite as acidic, because our soil is very acidic. Nothing went to waste. That I tried to save everything. I even have, you'll laugh, apple seeds, because I want to try and start growing some more apple trees. Will they be slow growing? Sure, but I'm still going to give it a shot. These were all organic apples, so it was great to be able to utilize the seeds. I have Fuji seeds and I have Gala seeds here to plant. And I saved portions of the core for a reason. That's actually an experiment I am going to do, and I will talk about that in another video. Blessings and shalom.